And we can get started. Welcome, everyone. I'm Melanie with PlayVS. Thank you for joining our coach clinic for healthy gaming. Our host is Nate Meeker. Um, and Nate, do you want to say anything about yourself before I let you take over?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Nate Meeker. I'm currently the esports director at the University of Akron. Been working in higher ed for about 12, 15 years now, and I'm excited to play host tonight to some talented individuals to talk about healthy gaming.
Thank you. All right. So this is our first person.
All right. So thank you for putting this together. Lindsay, would you go ahead and take it away for us?
Sure. So my name's Dr. Lindsay Miglior. I am a licensed medical doctor. I traditionally used to treat traditional sports athletes, but for the past 2 years have been building this field of esports medicine. I work with the pediatric population in day programs in high schools, but I also work with professional athletes as well in either orgs or independently. I am a PlayVS game changer, take this streaming ambassador, the advocacy director for Women in Games International, and the president of Queer Women of Esports as well. I also host a weekly talk show for the National Women's Hockey League and a podcast on esports health and wellness. So my background in this kind of comes from a health and wellness physician side, but also a in front of the camera side, which in COVID times is kind of what esports coaching is right now, is kind of what coaching is inherently. Do you want me to just keep going, Nate, or did you want to say anything? Okay, perfect.
No, go ahead. I think
Okay,
we're just going to run through the presentations. I'm kind of jotting down notes. I've got a few questions myself, and then we'll kind of go
sounds
from there.
great. Sounds great. So, COVID has drastically impacted a lot of our lives. For me, I was working in a rehab hospital in the beginning of this, and then I went from treating COVID positive patients for a month. It's canceled cons, it's changed tournaments, and it's fundamentally changed education, really the way we know it. But one of the positives of COVID is that this attention that is being drawn to esports and gaming. It's for some of you, your program would eventually get this kind of attention, but for some colleges, for some high schools, esports might be the only fall athletics going on or starting that won't be canceled eventually. RIP the Titans. But another positive about this is this opportunity that is provided as an esports coach. A lot of gamers are more comfortable with the headset on talking to a computer than they are with those in real life interactions. So this kind of gives you an opportunity as a coach to build trust and rapport that you may not have been had to before. The only downside to that is that a lot of what we know about communication is nonverbal. A lot of when you're talking to someone, how they hold themselves, how they carry themselves, the eye contact they make, their height, whether or not you find them attractive, all influences how well you're going to listen to them and how well you can build trust and rapport. So what does that mean for us? Why does that matter, right? Well, for me as a physician, how well I can build rapport with my patients determines how much they're going to listen to me, how well they're going to take my recommendations. Are they going to stop smoking? Are they going to go start exercising? And for you all as coaches, how well you build rapport with your athletes is going to determine how well they listen to you, right? So a lot of you might be really good at this in real life. A lot of you might have traditional sports backgrounds and coaching backgrounds, but on the internet, that means something very different, right? That is extremely different because you are on a computer screen and they also probably have Fortnite up on YouTube behind you, or they're watching Twitch on another thing. So getting their attention, keeping their attention during practice is something I'm going to touch on before I touch on the rest of that stuff. So basically, this is how you want to set yourself up for success. You want to, first and foremost, reduce the background noise. So as you know, a lot of people in esports suffer from attention issues. And associated with attention issues is easily distractibility by sounds. So an important thing to do is tiring out that dog before practice, telling your significant other to, try and keep it down, as my dog is outside the door talking. And then, silencing your phone beforehand. That's something little, but if you are talking to someone and all of a sudden your phone starts buzzing, their attention is no longer on you, right? It's on that background noise. And then there's also really small adjustments you can make that can have a drastic impact on how you're perceived. So for example, I'm sitting here like this. If I turn this off, the lighting on my face suddenly becomes a little bit different, and I lose a little bit of my credibility if I'm talking about how to appear good on camera, right? So I'm going to give you all a brief little tips before I hop on to the wellness side of things. Camera angle. So you can use a built-in camera on your computer. You can use your MacBook Air's camera. That doesn't matter, right? It's about the little things that you can get around the house that allows you to take it to that next step. So your camera should be slightly above you and looking down. Now, what that means for a lot of people is that they put it on a stack of books or something, or, buying a web camera right now. I mean, if you're in esports, you probably have a webcam, hopefully. If you don't and you're being price gouged at the current prices right now from everyone who's working at home, I'm sorry. But you want to, center your camera and put it slightly above you, looking down. Looking at the camera is really important because that is your eye contact, right? That is your eye contact. I know when you're talking, you want to be monitoring your team for their reactions or to see what they're doing, but making eye contact with the camera is really important. And the best advice I've ever heard was look at your camera like you would look at your dog, right? That's how you want to look at the camera. Your dog when it's behaving. So making sure you're making eye contact with the camera, and then if you're checking on your team, glancing to the side, or I'm glancing to my notes to make sure I'm not falling too far off track. That's something that's really important. Lighting. So like I showed earlier, that difference in lighting can be huge. So you want your lighting to be behind your camera. If you have a ring light, it can be around the camera, but you want your light to be behind your camera and never behind you, because that's going to cause some really, really weird shadows. And when I talk about this, I do a lot of telemedicine consulting for other physicians. And when I talk about this, people sometimes scoff and they're like, my lighting doesn't matter. It does matter. It does matter. There's hundreds of studies out there about how people perceive you based on your looks, based on how well, like your facial symmetry. And so if you have poor lighting on your face, it's going to impact the way that you coach. Unfortunately, this is the new normal. Microphone and a headset. So if you're using your gaming headset, that's great. You never want to use AirPods for meetings. AirPods have some of the worst microphone quality out of anything. So make sure you have a headset on, because if you don't and you're just using your laptop, it's going to pick up extraneous sounds. It's going to pick up your own feedback, which can be really distracting as well. And then this last one's a little controversial, so I want to apologize in advance. Virtual backgrounds. Virtual backgrounds work on a green screen when your green screen is lit separately from your face, right? That is how green screens work. That is how that processing works. So when you are using a virtual background in Zoom without proper lighting and a green screen, it's very distracting. Someone who has had ADHD her whole life, if someone's sitting in the meeting and every time they move, that virtual background shimmers around their hair or around their ears or around their headset, I am distracted and I am no longer listening to what you're saying. So if you want to use that virtual background, keep going, but just make sure that your background is lit separately. So you want whatever wall you're standing in front of to be lit separately from your face, and that has to be lit evenly. And that's how you're gonna get the best tips for the best outcome from that virtual background. Okay, so now that you've set yourself up for success, you can build rapport virtually. What are some things to pay attention to from a medical standpoint, from a health and wellness standpoint? The first thing I really do, I encourage people to find out is to see where their kids are gaming. So for those of you who were lucky enough to have a computer lab or an esports lab or a place where you all could be together, you had you had your computers, you had your keyboards, your mouse, your desks, your chairs, and that was all wonderful. But now for those of you who are virtual, where are your kids playing games now, right? Where are they gaming now? For those of you using PC titles, do they have a computer? Do they have a computer desk? Is it set up for mom and dad, or is it set up for them? If they're console gaming, are they console gaming on a TV that's mounted 5 feet above their heads? Are they 12 feet away from it? Do they have a chair to sit in? So I would really encourage everyone to reach out to your kids and see what their setups look like, because ergonomics are very, very, very important. I'm not going to harp on this too much, because there's lots of great resources, and I think the speakers after me are going to talk about it. But ergonomics is prevention, right? If your 16-year-old has intractable back pain and wrist pain, there's probably something wrong with them, right? That's not the thing we're seeing day to day in the pediatric population. What we're seeing is they develop these habits, and from a young age, they're developing what's called a thoracic kyphosis. So a hunch, they're hunched forward and their neck is pushed forward in a head forward posture. If you're 16, 17, that's not going to have health effects immediately, but that stability, that lengthening of the back muscles, the tightening of the chest muscles is only going to get worse as they get older. And by the time they're in their late 20s, early 30s, 40s, that's going to lead to back pain. So by allowing them to address their ergonomics now, you're going to really just be great down the road for them. So I think Mel was going to send their 1HP is a really wonderful resource. They have a beautiful article that goes over the ergonomics of gaming perfectly. So I would really encourage you all to read through that article, and then either send it out to your kids, or just have that knowledge in your head, because it's little things that you might not know. Fantastic. Okay, physical activity is another thing that I want to talk about. I remember, I think it was like second or third period in high school, I had gym, and then the next period I had math, and it was on the opposite side of the high school, and you have like 5 minutes to get to it. So I remember you would like sprint across the high school, you would get there, you'd be covered in sweat, and you'd almost be late. Your heart would be racing. Like, think about the amount of steps that kids got to and from the bus stop, to and from the parking lot, throughout class, between classes, in gym. Virtual learning has eliminated that. I know that gym classes have been really creative. I've seen a lot of really funny videos, but we're not getting nearly as much exercise. And I know, unless you're one of those weird COVID people who has gotten into fitness, most of us probably aren't getting enough physical activity either. So, getting some form of physical activity is essential for these kids, and here's how I pitch it to gamers and esports athletes. I don't say, hey, you need to get physical activity because studies have shown gamers have less lean body mass, and that can lead to metabolic syndrome, diabetes, and cancer down the road, right? 16-year-olds doesn't care, right? 17-year-old doesn't care that what they're doing is setting them up for diabetes down the road. How I pitch it is, if you exercise, it's going to make you better at video gaming, right? Exercise releases endorphins, and endorphins have these wonderful effects on memory, on learning, on reaction time. There are studies and studies and studies out there that show the beneficial effects on cognitive performance of exercise. So that is how I would pitch it. And I'm really have been encouraging coaches to integrate some sort of physical activity into your practices, either before or after. Either encourage your kids to send a photo of themselves going for a walk beforehand or after, or taking a halfway through practice, taking a break and getting up and doing jumping jacks, doing burpees if you're weird like that, or doing some sort of physical activity, and then encouraging your kids to do it before or after practice is important. And you can actually make it a game, have them, if you're using aim lab or an aim trainer of sorts, having them do the aim trainer, and then having them all go for like a 400-yard run, like run 400 yards as fast as you can, come back, have them elevate their heart rates, and then go do the aim trainer again. A lot of times the placebo effect will take care of the results for us. But if you tell them, it's going to make you better. This is going to make you better. Getting physical activity involved at an early age, especially, I mean, that's always going to be something that I'm going to recommend, even when we're back into in-person learning. But right now, there is a severe lack of physical activities in these kids' lives. And for you as a coach, some of you might be thinking, this isn't my job. Like, this isn't my job. I'm an esports coach. But I treat my esports athletes like traditional athletes. I think esports is a sport. You're using your body and your brain to perform competitively. So I treat it like a sport. And for all of you who, I say, because some of you might be out of high school or college recently, but there were no esports teams when I was in high school or college. So but I did play traditional sports, and my coach was the authority in everything, right? I remember sitting in between two-a-days eating Smart Start and peanut butter because that's what my coach wanted us to eat to get energy, right? There was like carbohydrates, peanut butter, boom, that's all you need. So being able to have this information and being able to champion this can have a huge effect on these kids' life, especially if you take the steps that we mentioned beforehand to allow you to build that rapport a lot quicker. All right, the two more things I want to touch on. I promise I won't go over my time. Nutrition. So being at home also means no more cafeteria food, which can be good, but also can be bad. Parents who have to work from home now with adolescents, teenagers, and younger kids around them, means a lot more pizza. It means a lot of more microwavable meals. It means a lot more grab and go, a lot more them making the choices rather than them being laid out for them at the cafeteria and have freshly prepared meals, even if it's pizza. So nutrition is integral to any athletic success, any athlete's success. So I would encourage you to have a brief conversation to get the understanding and the knowledge of your athletes on nutrition. Like, do they know what a carb is? Do they know what a protein is? Do they know what fat is? Do they know what sources those are coming from? And having them talk about the things that they eat for breakfast, the things that they eat before games, the things that they eat before training, can also be really, really enlightening, because a lot of them are not eating healthily and don't know that they're not eating healthily, unfortunately. So the basics of things that I always talk about to this age range is the difference between a simple carb and a simple carb and a complex carb. So a simple carbohydrate are processed foods, things like white bread, sugar, sweets, and basically what that does is you take in the simple carb, it spikes your blood sugar, right? You get a huge rush of energy, a huge burst of energy, but that spike in sugar is followed by a spike in insulin, which lowers your blood pressure or your blood sugar. It's late in the day for me. I'm on the East Coast. So that spike in insulin is followed by a crash, right? You get fatigued, you get tired, your energy dips. So while you might be Marshawn Lynch and eat Skittles right before kickoff, you need to sustain that intake in order to avoid that crash. So choosing complex carbs, like whole grain pasta, whole grain cereals, sweet potatoes, what else? Oatmeal, vegetables. Those give you that sugar rush, that sugar spike, and gives you that energy, but it's sustained. You don't get the crash after. And so your brain can actually only use sugar as a form of energy. It can't use fat. It can't use protein. So it does need sugar and it does need carbs. But reaching for complex carbs before matches, before training days can have a really amazing impact on performance as well. Hydration. So I cannot stress the importance of hydration enough. There are so many studies out there on the effect of dehydration on reaction time and on cognitive performance. So what I like to say is, everyone show up to practice with a sealable water bottle, right? Sealable water bottle, very important. You don't want to be responsible for destroying the family computer. So having them, show you at the beginning of the practice, hey, I have this water bottle right here. or moonshine, but having this water bottle next to you and, then making it into some sort of competition, who can finish it first, who can finish the water bottle first, because kids, anything you can turn into a competition. And then at the end of practice, have everyone show their water bottle again. If you haven't finished it, you got to finish your water. And making that part of daily habits to where they are constantly reaching for water while they're playing, while they're gaming, is a really good health practice that if started now can stay with them for a really long time, hopefully the rest of their life. Supplements, unless prescribed by their doctor, these kids shouldn't be taking any supplements. No nootropics, nothing to help them with gaming performance. Absolutely not. That's one of the things I'm very passionate about. They can be extremely dangerous to kids, especially with some of the lead levels found in some of the supplements. No supplements for any of your kids. Please ask them. Please make sure. I mean, you could literally dramatically impact their life by asking that question. So just, teaching these healthy habits now is really important. So those are really my top things that I address in this gaming population. And the last thing that I want to touch on is, getting a feel for their training schedule. No in-person learning or, a truncated schedule or whatever your school system is doing right now means we're seeing really a huge increase in game playing, a huge increase in screen time and consumption. I saw on Twitter the other day that Mongrel's teacher caught him watching Fortnite in the reflection of his glasses, which I thought was hilarious. But bless teachers. So burnout happens because of poor training schedules. It happens for a couple other reasons too, but poor training schedules is one of them. So encouraging other forms of non-screen related training. So if they finish with practice and they're like, I'm gonna go scrim with my buddies for 3 hours, I'm gonna go sit in pubs for 3 hours, having them take a little bit of a break and doing hand-eye coordination. That is my Chewini, and in the background, she's quite old. Having them do hand-eye coordination, aim training, yoga. Hold on one second. She's barking at a ball that's stuck under the couch right now. So things that aren't them directly playing the game, but will improve their performance. So asking your kids. This is my Chewini Chico. She just wants everyone to know she's here, in case you were interested. So asking your kids, do they have a training schedule? A lot of kids want to go pro, right? They want to join Team Liquid. They want to be in FaZe Clan. They want to be taken seriously as an esports athlete. But asking them, are they taking themselves seriously, right? Are they taking their training seriously? Are they putting into esports what they want to get out of esports? If you're a high school football player, you're the high school starting quarterback, you're the best one on your team, and you want to go play at Texas, the dedication and treatment that they are applying to their physical training is how our esports athletes will eventually apply to their training. So encouraging them to come up with a training schedule, posting it above their desk, encouraging them to track their progress in Aim Lab, to track their progress in their game and have a spreadsheet and see how they're doing across the days, just like a football player would track their, their passer rating or something like that. And then, encouraging them to take this seriously and integrate forms of cross-training is really something that is not only going to combat burnout, but it's going to be good for esports in the long run. So, I have left 5 minutes for questions. I'm very proud of myself. I was given until 3. So that's all the content I have. So if anyone has any questions or if you want to move on to the next speaker, whatever you want.
Thanks, Lindsay. Right now, we don't have any questions queued up in the chat, but if anyone does have any questions, you can feel free to use that QA button down at the bottom there. I suppose that last point I think is really pointed as well, about having the students track what they're doing. So we've found at the college level, even our early 20s, mid 20s somethings really don't realize how either little exercise they're actually getting in or quite how bad their diets actually are. So when you start having them do weekly tracking sheets for these, it really becomes apparent as to what they need to work on in order to get better in those particular areas. Are there any questions that anyone in the chat would like to ask for Lindsay here? If not, we may be able to come back to it later, but we appreciate your time today. And looks like we are moving on to our next speaker here. Brian, would you like to introduce yourself and take it away for us?
Yeah, hi, my name is Brian Finn. I'm the lead athletic trainer for Northside Hospital Sports Medicine. My background is kind of all over the place. I went to school for athletic training, also did EMT and a wilderness CMT, so did like search and rescue and backpacking leadership programming with athletes and students. Those travels took me out to California, where I got to work with USA's national rugby program, both for sevens, for the Olympics prep, and then as well as for 15s as their head physio. I've also worked with the NFL through Exos, as well as the MLB and a variety of other professional institutions. My real reason for moving out to California, not gonna lie, was to work with pro surfers, and got the gracious opportunity to do that too with the ASP. So I was living in Colorado, was working with a doc that was actually moving out to Georgia to become part of Northside Sports Medicine program. And he had offered me to come out. And as I finally get out here, we're working and we're moving. And lo and behold, you find this hub of just esports that exists in the greater Atlanta area. And it's pretty unbelievable, the resources that are out here. Instantaneously, Dr. Wright, who is our chief physician that I work for, she has a particular pride about technology in and around medicine, as well as esports and the development within esports. So actually, she developed a relationship with Hi-Res, and we had brokered a deal with them and their athletes with the Paladin and Smite programs that were coming over. And they housed about 90 athletes out in the greater Georgia area. We provided medical support for them. We then also began to start capturing data points on them, everything from ergonomics to functionality to function movement screenings, providing them resources such as diet, nutrition. In addition to that, we also work with NBA 2K's program, Talons, and then we've been pretty involved with Andrew Greenberg with the Georgia Esports Society, as well as N2, which is a youth program. So we're kind of covering all levels here right now. And the biggest thing that that I've come to really enjoy is that this is in its infancy, meaning you have a very great opportunity right now to really change the culture of this program at the youngest level and really start to create notoriety and a healthy balance to this type of sport. And that's kind of my little life story. Just had a baby on August 29th. He's about to turn 5 weeks old, whoop, whoop, to not sleeping anymore. So let the fun begin. But that's kind of my whole deal.
Hey everyone, I'm Cooper Fiscus Van Rossum, and Brian and I are kind of a tag team for the next segment. I'm the former head coach over at the Mount Vernon School in Atlanta. Did that for 2 years, did League of Legends and Rocket League. I feel like my shtick is that I always say that we started off as a LAN party and we ended up being an athletics program. And when that transition started to happen is when I really started to think about, wait a minute, what really makes us an athletics department? And then through happenstance, Brian and I met through an invitation to go speak to a group of into Fortnite kids. And we met, I guess it was almost like 8-9 months ago. And since then, we've been talking to each other off and on, back and forth, to try and kind of develop some sort of high school specific, what do you want to call it, curriculum or planning specifically for high school esports. What we kind of noticed together was pro teams, amateur teams, maybe even some college teams have this ability to kind of manipulate their schedules to work around the athletes. And in high school, you are limited to what someone above you gives you. whether that's 5 days a week after school for 3 hours or that's on Mondays. So we wanted to look at it as like, how can we use what Brian knows and Northside and physical elements to really res up an athletics program at a school for a high school. And coupled within all of that was this idea of legitimacy. And that'll kind of bring us into the presentation itself. So what really kicked us off as a group, or Brian and I, was, how do we res up and legitimize high school esports, right? Like, I came from a school that was really supportive on the forefront, but I still had to make a lot of things happen on my own. I was the only coach, had about 15 to 20 kids. We did year-round, fall and spring sports, and I've spoken to many, many coaches who are their solo coach. We have a Georgia coach who's got 35, 40 kids at her school, and it was just 2 of them. And the question became, what's legitimacy look like at these high school programs? How do we move from a LAN party with pizza to an athletics program with jerseys and schedules and structure? And it really came down to looking at it as like, you know what? Just like the slide says, when it comes to gaming and healthy gaming specifically, esports is just another sport. It just looks a little different the way you play it. And so what do we mean by that? Well, you can go to the next slide. It's kind of simple when you really look at sports culture at the macro. So it gives you 2 things, right? If we're just another sport, then we can use other sports as templates to talk about what does a legitimate athletics healthy program look like? What does soccer practice look like? What does football practice look like? What does golf practice look like? There's going to be things across the board universally in athletics departments that you can pick, borrow, and steal to start building your framework for a legitimized high school athletics program within your esports program. So just as Doc said, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. Just, as in Rocket League, make it flashy and cool, and make it specific for how you want to play, right? So the second thing that we kind of, Brian and I think we felt like we had a breakthrough, probably not the only ones who thought this, but you start speaking this common language, right? Like, Brian comes from a rugby background, right? Nothing is more grittier than rugby. I come from World of Warcraft, right? But when we start talking about health goals and athletics departments and what it means to be a healthy human and then a healthy athlete, we start speaking a common language. And when you want to talk about legitimizing your department or legitimizing yourself to your athletics department, to maybe your parents, your colleagues at school, the principal, the dean, whoever it is, if you're using common languages around practice, around goals, around structured schedule, around health outcomes, they all of a sudden don't look at esports as this foreign thing that exists with the nerds. It's just like, wait a minute, you're talking about getting in the gym? Well, that's what football players do. And the answer is no. That's what healthy athletes do. And you start breaking down these walls and you start realizing, or other people start realizing that we're just talking about healthy kids who are great at something they love and being that coach that's going to support them and getting them to what it means to be legitimized so that they can prove to their parents and the school that this is truly a sport. So globally, all of this healthy athlete stuff for us was really about building an acceptance of culture around your team on the coach level, right? Like, I know what it's like to be the one adult in that room trying to wrangle kids to go from queuing up the minute they get into the practice to making sure that all of a sudden they go in, they've set up all the equipment, they know what the first 20 minutes looks like, they know what the breaks look like, they know what the scrimmages look like, and they know what the replays look like. And that's an amazing feeling. And it came from stealing from soccer and football and manipulating it to make it work for esports. And you can move to the next slide, please. So another big thing that I love to push about esports is toxicity in accordance with legitimacy. Toxicity, we all know the stigma around streaming culture. We know the meme culture. We know that people like to look at banned videos, right? But that is not where we want to be as an esports league in high school. We want to be in a place where, just like this says, we want to create healthy minds so that these kids can be standard bearers of sportsmanship when they move on to college. We want the middle schoolers that move up from 7th, 8th into 9th to play varsity to go ahead and be the kids that are setting the next example of what it means to stream, what it means to be a team player. A lot of these kids may have never played on a team sport ever in their life. They're amazing at solo queue, but you get them in a room or you get them on a 5-person stream in Discord and it all breaks down. And a lot of that comes from this concept of how do we create good mental health and good healthy minds. Now, as a coach, it's the third thing down, but it's bolded. You have to lead by example. I have heard coaches, when I've played with them, that it is embarrassing to be in the game. And it makes me feel really bad for their kids. If this is how the coach acts, that's how the kids are going to act. If you can lead by example and you can be a stand-up athlete yourself, or just like Doc was saying before, right? Like setting these things in line, lead by example, then the kids will fall into that structure as well. So how do you do that, right? We're talking about mental health. We're talking about having a safe space to be vulnerable. As I said, lots of kids are great at solo queue, not so great at team sports. None of us are good at being critiqued. It's a growth moment that everybody has to accept. And in team sports, critique is how you get better. But you have to lead by example as a coach to say that this is a safe space. This is an environment open to critique. We're going to listen to each other. We're not going to blame anyone, but we're going to point out moments of growth. We're going to do replays. We're going to talk. We're going to do huddles. We're going to go around the room and we're going to talk about how we can each improve and what we can do to do that. It's really silly at first, and a lot of kids don't want to do it. But just like a lot of training and practice structure, they'll start to see the results, and then they will become champions for this. And when this next season rolls around and the new kid rolls in and he's laughing at the idea of a sportsmanship pledge, or he's laughing at the idea of getting around the huddle and going around and talking about how I failed at the game, you'll have your veterans calming that kid down and saying, no, this is how it works. This is how we work as a team. The ultimate goal is at the end of practice, the end of season, the team walks out of the room, right? Not individual players. They hold themselves up, they hold each other up. There's some techniques that we've kind of established that kind of help with this at Mount Vernon. And this is kind of a little bit different in the COVID world, depending on how your school works. But there's just some stuff that you can instantly put into your practices, right? Like one of my favorite ones is just to get up and walk away, right? Let's take League of Legends, a 40-minute match that goes from level 1 to just unbelievably powerful, just jazzed up. The speed and the intensity of the game, they go from calm to hyped, and they have to come back down in 5 to 10 minutes to play again. You need to get up, get that team out of there, walk out of the room wherever they're playing, and change their space, right? Take some breaths, which Brian's going to talk about some of those techniques. But you need to move yourself away, come back, and then you can start what we would do, which is post-match 2+1, which is 2 things that my teammates did well, 1 thing that maybe I didn't do so well, right? So you're helping out your teammates, you're showing how you're recognizing them as a team, that they're doing well, and you're putting yourself on the floor and being vulnerable, and to say, like, this is where I need some help, this is where I screwed up, right? Like, my aerials are horrible. That's an opportunity for a teammate to say, you know, I think I can help you out in practice tomorrow or later. Like, let's do some one-to-ones, right? What's kind of great about that is when they start to be okay with being vulnerable, to critique themselves as a coach, maybe as the season goes on, you can introduce now let's critique each other, right? It's a fine line, it's a little dangerous, but once they become a team, they're probably going to move into this on their own anyway, right? Like, hey, I didn't really do so good at that match. Like, I bought the wrong items. Someone's going to poke up and say, man, I did the same thing. I noticed that you did this. And it becomes a conversation between the team, right? If you watch some videos of pro teams, they're doing this in their practice sessions. Watch some videos of how they work. They get up and they talk to each other. Communication is key. And then the last thing on this one before I move over to Brian is structured practice with expectations. As Doc was saying before, structure is so important and your practice is important. If you want to become legitimized, and this goes down to the students too, if you want the students to believe in your program and to come to this and believe in these workouts, it has to be structured. They have to know what they're coming into for practice, so they show up on time. They know what the plan is. They know what the first 20 is, the first 5 minutes is. They know what a scrim looks like. They come into that structured practice with expectations. All of a sudden, it's a legitimate activity. It's not a LAN party. And then the last little nugget is these sportsmanship pledges. They sound so silly, but you put out on paper at the beginning of the season, this is who we are as a team. This is who you are as a player, and this is what sportsmanship looks like at this school and in this program. You start the season off with letting everybody know this is a safe space. This is a place for critique and a place for teams. And you can go ahead and start those conversations of what it looks like to be a healthy team as you recognize how to make a healthy player. And I think the next one, yeah, and then the next one starts, Brian.
Awesome. Cooper, that was great. You hit the nail right on the head there. When he was talking about the gross overview of taking in consideration everything that these athletes are going to be stressed with strength and conditioning, we call that periodization. We're looking to build out an annual view of everything that's going to occur for this athlete. And that's going to help us better generate productivity within that group by limiting certain stresses and knowing when actually we should be pouring it on, so to speak, picking up the tempo, or maybe we should be dropping it before a very high stakes match. And we'll circle back around to that in a minute. I want to kind of pick up where Cooper was left off, and that's with breathing and reading your athletes. I've had the blessing of working with a variety of different athletes, coached everything from soccer, lacrosse, again, mid-level to your elite levels, to working with, swimmers who swim the English Channel, a variety. Everything that I've kind of pulled from that, though, is there's certain mannerisms that you have to be paying attention to. And that is, what is the body talking about? And Dr. Migliori had kind of hit this well off at the beginning, where really providing us with that insight that, hey, if their shoulders are slouched and their posture is setting up at an early age, they're going to have long-term ramifications as a result of that. But that posture is actually telling us something too at the same time. If I'm closing up and my shoulders are down, let's take, for example, like an interview, for example. If you're interviewing somebody and they're closing off, their arms are crossed and everything's shunted up, you're picturing in relationship to that person, well, they're closing off. I'm not able to engage with that person. I'm not really getting across to that person. Whereas somebody that's opened up, their arms are down, they're looking like they're welcoming, almost like that hug movement, the arms are out, your chest is up. That's a little bit more warm and inviting. These types of body postures and positions will start to take place as the games and the sport is actually continuing on. You'll see that posture maybe pick up. Oh, I did something great. I got that kill. That was amazing. Hey, good read over there. Or I'm not doing it. I'm not getting to where I need to be. I'm not reading the situation. I'm shutting down. And now it's just that trickle down effect of, what do I do? So I'm getting a little bit closer. Maybe I'm not keeping up the comms. Okay. These are indicators that something is going on a personal level for that athlete. And that could generally affect everybody else on that squad. Okay. And then maybe sometimes you'll get some infighting as a result. Again, bring it back to breathing. We'll be down out in the field with USA Rugby playing, call it like Spain or something. And it's in the middle, we got a break. We're going to bring everybody into a quick huddle and take a breath. And it's the rules of 3. And this is a very good tool that you should implement with your athletes, whether it's getting them synced up for getting ready for practice, or something just happened and you need to diffuse it and you need to bring them back to a center. And the rule of 3 is you take 3 seconds to inhale. So everybody try this out. You're going to breathe in through your nose and exhale through your mouth. You're going to take 3 seconds to inhale. You're going to hold that in for 3 seconds. Then you're going to exhale for 3 seconds. Okay. So first thing is in through the nose. And as you do that, pull that belly button in. You feel that raise your body, open up your chest. Now exhale. 1, 2, 3. We're going to do it again. Now what I want you to do is I want you to keep that belly button in, and I want you to squeeze your butt cheeks actually, okay? This is good for getting you back into a position, all right? Ready? So deep breath into the nose, belly button in, exhale. Breathe out through that straw. You should feel that provide you with some rigidity. That what we're doing is we're hollowing, we're providing that support to the spinal column to now put us in a posturally sound position. Get those shoulders to kind of drop a little bit, okay? You usually want to do this breathing exercise 3 times, okay? You can do more than 1 set. It really depends on the sensitivity of the scenario and reading your athletes at that moment. So now we go ahead and we get them relaxed. Another good technique, oh man, you can get kids, like I'll go into an auditorium and teach a group of 5th, 6th, and 7th graders. If you're having difficulty controlling your group, like Doc was saying, loud noises, they can be a distraction, but it can also be to your advantage too. So a good rule of thumb is something called the clap. So clap once if you can hear me. You'll maybe get 1 or 2. Clap twice if you can hear me. And you raise your tone a little bit, and then clap 3 times. And then you should have mute. You should have silence, because now everybody else around them is seeing that, oh, I've got to do this. I've got to do this. Okay, so now we're together. Now you have that quiet sense of that quiet time where now you can provide your instruction. And when you're providing that instruction, be direct and be simple. I usually use the rule stupid simple. You have to keep it in layman's terms, and you have to put it in context that they're going to understand, okay? So we addressed a little bit of breathing. We got them back into some posture. Another good rule and way for us to kind of decrease stress is a stress shrug too as well. Oftentimes we're getting up here. Our upper traps are over compensating for everything. My pecs are super dominant because most of our backs are weak just naturally because we don't utilize them as effectively. And this is what I get into. And then you get that arch that Doc was talking about, that hunchback. So what we want to do is get that breath. We also want to deactivate our upper traps. So same thing, we're going to actually do this for a couple of seconds. We're going to hold it for about 30 seconds. I got my phone here. It's a SE too as well, super small, but I can still see the screen, so nobody worry. I'm going to hold this for about 15 seconds, okay? And just listen to my cueing as we're doing this. So what I want you to do is I want you to take that deep breath in, exhale through that mouth, and then on that exhale, on the next inhale, I want you to shrug up and bring your shoulders all the way up to your ears. Ready? And in, out, and shoulders up, and pinch, and pinch. I'm going to hold this for 15 seconds. Keep breathing, okay? Keep pinching. Be mindful of your chin. Push your chin in. What I like to call the double chin is in. 2021, here we come. I want multiple layers here, all right? This is going to help reduce cervical stress on your neck. Exhale when I get to 3. 1, 2, 3. And drop those shoulders like you're dropping weights. Do a little bit of a roll, okay? Now pinch those shoulders back using those shoulder blades and keep that chin back. Now that's posture. Hold that for the rest of your day. I'll be back in a couple of minutes and we'll check on you, okay? So that's a basic exercise. Keep it fun, keep it relaxed. Your mannerisms and your energy are going to be picked up by your athletes. So if you come into a setting hot, or if you come into a setting disappointed, they're going to pick up on that body language. Everything that we just talked about, you picking up on them, they're going to be able to pick up that same feedback on you. So keep that in the back of your mind. One thing that stuck with me for my entire life is fake it till you make it, okay? So just keep that confidence in yourself and know that your job is to help make them better, whether that's at gaming or life in general. It doesn't make a difference. You're a positive influence in their life. Now, other exercises that we want to throw at them too as well, something that we can throw and change a little bit. Planks are a great exercise program, and also hip raises or hip extension. One of my big rules is if you ain't squeezing, then you just be teasing, okay? We need to get the glutes active all the time. We sit way too much. We occlude those blood vessels. We shunt nerve fiber. We're really diminishing support to our spine as a result. So breathe in, get the body up, and then squeeze your glutes. What I'll challenge people is that throughout your hour, do about 10 butt squeezes. Squeeze your glutes, hold for a couple of seconds, and then relax. Intermittently throughout your day. Have that little sign up on your screen. This will help to start mediate back pain issues and that long-lasting issue that will come back to catch you in the butt, literally, if you don't take care of this, all right? So the planks are going to help coordinate both your glutes and your TVA. So you got 3 abdominal muscles. The one that we don't use that is actually the most pertinent to us is something called our transverse abdominal, or TVA. It sits and hollows out in and around our ribs and our diaphragm, and it's not really, you can't see it as well. But that breathing mechanism that I just taught you guys about, breathing into the nose and out through the mouth, will then help manifest that activation of that muscle, okay? So when you're actually doing these exercises too, a plank or a push-up or a side plank position, because side flex are actually great for glutes, by the way, little fun fact. You're going to actually be letting into that TVA, and we want to recruit that muscle, and that breathing will help recruit more efficiency out of that exercise. Now, Cooper had touched upon critique and criticism. That, again, goes back to creating that safe space within that environment for those athletes. Now, criticism is something that can be taken in a negative connotation. You're sitting there kind of shaming an individual to one extent. Critiquing, you're providing feedback. And this is, you want to provide this in a form that, oops, sorry. Melanie, would you be able to hit the next slide for me? Cool. Critique and criticism. Bam. So critiquing, we want to be fun. You want to make it jovial. You want to create that environment where people feel safe. And that's where that rule of 2 + 1, 2 positives and 1 negative. And that negative isn't casted in the sense that, oh, this is my weakness. It's what is my improvement? Use that positive language in your terminology and embed that in the culture that you're developing for your team, because that is going to be paramount in you creating that successful platform for people to be open to getting critiqued and for them to feel comfortable to critique their peers. In these environments, you really have to go ahead and provide that energy and say, this is a safe space at the end of the day. We're here to help you. We're helping each other. There is no you versus me. It's together fighting for a common goal at the end of the day. And that's what this camaraderie is about. You know, the military, the reason they put them through hell the way they do around each other is because they're trying to draw bonds between them to share experiences that will then forge these bonds so that they will always be dependable on each other. Similar scenarios are developed for a variety of different programs. You know, rugby in itself is kind of similar to the military, where they beat you up, but you're with each other and you have that selfless nature. Soccer too as well, volleyball, surfing, whatever it may be. You got to work with each other and create inter-squad competition. Would you be about to click to the next slide for me, please? So inter-squad competition, one great thing that Doc kind of touched upon is like the water bottle game. You can go ahead and have that take place where you start with one and, you know, have that competition, have a reward system there too as well. We don't want to have something empty valued at the end of the day. We want to create something that they'll be kind of stoked for and be able to really push each other for. Now the health plan. All right, I got about 3 minutes to jam all this out. Ready, set, let's go. Periodization, the biggest thing that we want to do, okay? We want to look at everything from school to what you're looking to achieve with regards to your goals for your team, okay? So at the basic level, we want to go ahead and talk with our team and strive for goals. Let's go ahead and set one long-term goal and 2 short-term goals. Those long-term goals are something that are going to be concluded at the end of the year. Maybe that's to make it to the Final Four of your season playoffs, or maybe it's to, you know, finish 25 in the national rankings. You know, you're going to have shorter goals. Those are going to be your short-term goals. Are going to be about 3 to 6 months in duration. Okay. And those are going to be small things that we're going to build up to. And then we look at, okay, so what even gets us to those short-term goals? Maybe that's, you know, improving kill to death ratios, maybe longer lifespans. How do we go ahead about doing that? And we have to integrate program building now. Now we got to think about what are the structured pieces within the practice that are going to get us there. You know, we're going to look at, when we're looking to build this out, is having that athlete be at their highest level of performance at that most crucial time. And normally that's playoffs. So we look at the preseason, the postseason, the offseason, as well as the in season. We want to know what they're doing in their offseason. This is normally where they're training to get better for their actual season. Their preseason, we're actually not going to load up too much. We're going to focus on the skill sets that they have and focus on their skills and team development to create that camaraderie within the system. Within the season, we're looking on developing, you know, just basic maintenance programs. Okay. Now, when I'm working with athletes, we actually test them before, after, and with those season windows, we have different testing periods. And what we're looking at is functional movements. We're looking at strength training. We're looking to develop these athletes. And that's just as important now with esports as it is with any other sport crossover. During that off-season window, they should be out running a little bit more. They should be more engaged with each other in some other type of form that doesn't revolve them being behind a screen sometimes, okay? We got to get them thinking outside that box and create those creative juices going. In preseason, we'll bring them together a little bit. We'll do some exercises, but again, it's going to be more for posture integrity and for overall core strength, really trying to focus on those pieces that are going to get them through the season as a whole. And then on the actual in-season, we're going to provide them with small exercises and stretch management tools such as foam rolling. Great tool. If you haven't seen it, we'll create a video for you all to go ahead and use. It's a great way to mediate tissue tension. And then you go ahead and then you're done with the off. You're done. Season's over. Recovery time. This is the biggest part. Walk away from it for a little bit. Walk away from it for a week, 2 weeks. Switch the game. If it's not even walking away from League of Legends, just do Rocket League. Switch it up. Figure something else out that creates a little bit more of that love for it again. Okay? And you want to be clear with your messaging. Okay? At the end of the day, as a coach, you want to make sure that you're captivating to these kids. This is our mission. This is our goal. And these are the steps that we're going to take to get there. And if you go to the next slide, it can kind of give them a better visual of how we want to kind of set this up. Now, funny enough, I took this from my high school state championship rugby program in Colorado, copy and pasted it and brought it over when I was working with Cooper. And we realized that the other day, it's like, oh, it says rugby periodization on the bottom left-hand corner. It still works. It works. It all works. Okay, so let's look at the colors real quick. So what we did was we just mapped out the months, and then we met based off of the months. We're looking at the individual days. We're actually tracking the number of hours that they're going to be taking on over the course of the season. So we see what the overall load is going to be. Then you also factor in when are they in school and when are they out of school. So now you can actually schedule your practices a bit more effectively. And you want to take time to do this in the beginning. Set your goals up early. So now you can go ahead and pick it apart as the season starts to unfold and as you're just trying to kind of ad hoc based off of what they're doing. And then you're looking at other goals such as your training focus, what are your gaming focuses, and what's your team focus, okay? And then from there we base it. Each one of these little boxes at the very bottom will have a reference on another sheet that will go into a detailed debrief on what your practice scheme is looking like. What does your dynamic warm-up look like? A dynamic warm-up for an esport athlete should be a little bit of an exercise, like a plank, maybe some push-ups, a wall hold, and then you factor in some Kovacs or some tag and identification. You're looking for aiming skills. It depends on what the format of the game that they're playing is going to be. And then you go ahead and you start your scrims or your simulations where now they're doing 2-on-1s or 1v1s or whatever it may be for your practice dynamic that you feel is good for your group. And then you go ahead and you launch into your game system. Now you look at the back end of practice. We finished. Now we got to take them down. Let's consolidate and look at what we just did. And that's where you're having your round talks, your huddles, your information passing back and forth, your 2+1s. But you should also be encouraging some activities such as some push-ups, some sit-ups, maybe some core exercises to go ahead and make sure everything, all that stress that they just manifested over this last 30, 40 minutes of playing to an hour, 2 hours, they're able to get out of their system. All right, folks, mic drop. That is it. I'm sorry for taking all that time.
Thank you, guys. That was excellent. I like the ending spreadsheet there. It looks very detailed.
Yeah, and just to kind of 20 seconds on that, as a coach, if you're new and you've never done this before, start with what works for your program, right? Start with those small goals that you can accomplish within your time frame. And as you build into that next couple seasons, you start to grow and build out a spreadsheet and get more focus. The thing that Doc said that I wrote down was really important is I want esports kids in high school to be prepared for a college program to walk in that practice door and have expectations that there's going to be workouts and there's going to be expectations, and you should never be the kid that walks in and goes, what do you mean I got to work out? Like that is not you are to be an athlete, and that's what you should strive to do to progress your career. So be the athlete you want to be.
And can I just say one more thing? Doc, you nailed this too as well. No athlete wants to be told what prevents injuries. They want to know what is going to make them perform better. Whether that is a traditional sport or esports, it's performance over prevention. But know that prevention is part of that performer, and that's how we'll get them to be where we need them to be, is by giving them some performance with some prevention, and it all works to their benefit at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. The one thing that Cooper mentioned earlier too about the treating the players just in a similar way that you would treat athletes and talking to them in that way and planning for activity in that way has really helped at the collegiate level as well, because we're still getting in players that come to us for the first time competing in any type of organized activity, and giving them the legitimacy of being a college athlete has really helped out. And I believe we have one more presenter as well, if I am not mistaken. Bringing up our slide here. I think we have a slide.
Yeah, I think they're going to be playing a short video.
Oh, okay.
Should be just a 45-second video.
The Games and Online Harassment Hotline is a text message-based, anonymous, and confidential emotional support hotline. And it's created specifically for the gaming community. Because we're gamers and creators, and we want to help each other. So, how does it work? Well, you text us and we listen. Our hotline is 100% anonymous. We can talk about anything you need to, and only what you want to. The Games and Online Harassment Hotline is an inclusive resource for anyone, no matter how you identify. If you feel that you need emotional support, you can start right now by texting support to 23368, and our qualified responders will be there to listen to you, free of charge. Reach out, get help, and let's make this community a better place to work and play.
Thank you.
Yeah, so
Oh, go ahead. We're joined from Jay from Games Hotline. Jay, go ahead and take it away.
sorry to cut you off there. Yeah, so I'm just here just for a few minutes to kind of introduce the Games Hotline as a resource. We found that, Cooper talked a little bit about toxicity and stuff already in games, and something that we, being in the games community, found was that a lot of times when people were experiencing harassment or toxicity in the game space, and they would try to go to other mental health providers, whether it was therapists or other hotlines, or even just friends seeking emotional support. Sometimes missing that kind of cultural competency around games, and feeling kind of this disconnect between games and quote unquote the real world, resulted in a lot of dismissive responses to folks. And that's not really what someone needs to hear in the moment when they're experiencing something that maybe feels overwhelming, or just it feels really important to them, and it's not so simple as, well, just get offline or stop playing that game or whatever. That doesn't honor the complexity of what these games mean to people, especially young folks, in that games can be such an important and nourishing and fulfilling social, emotional, and physical way. So that's what we wanted to create with the Games Hotline, was an emotional support space that is by and for gamers, where folks could come and talk to folks who already have a basic understanding of games and esports and the game development world. So this is an emotional resource for anyone who makes and plays games. So that includes y'all as players, for coaches themselves, or anyone, or even folks organizing tournaments or doing kind of some of those more peripheral roles. As a lot of the amazing speakers have already talked about today, especially as coaches, what y'all bring into the space can make a really, really big difference in kind of just the energy of the team that day, or setting the tone for a season to come. And that's also true of the players, right? In how they treat their teammates. And but that isn't to say that when especially when someone experiences harassment or any other mental health issue that is going on in their life, whether that's friendship tension or something happening at home or just general depression or anxiety, that's going to affect also the team dynamic. And so it can be really, really beneficial to have a space to take those feelings and talk to someone who will listen and is just there to support you, and will believe you when you talk about your experiences. And specifically for harassment and toxicity, I know Cooper and I had a great conversation about this too, of, there isn't a dichotomy of villain and victim here, right? Most people who kind of say something toxic or do behave in a toxic way have also received that toxicity themselves. And so understanding that this is kind of an ecosystem as it happens in games, and knowing that there aren't sides and not good people and bad people, just people, knowing that there is a space where you can go to talk about your feelings and what happened and how it felt to experience toxicity, but also to talk about your feelings and how it felt and what you're thinking now when you've said something toxic or behaved in a way that maybe doesn't align with how you want to be perceived or how you want to act in a space, especially with people you care about. So yeah, I tried to squish a bunch of things into a short amount of time because I know we're over. But yeah, we're just really excited to be open. We're a pretty new emotional support resource that's culturally competent in understanding the games world. And we're here to talk over text. We're a fully confidential and text message based system. We find that gamers have an easier time sometimes talking over text than voice. So yeah, it's USA only, and we are currently only open during the hours of 4 to 7 p.m. Pacific time on Monday through Friday. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you,
Happy to
Jay.
answer any questions.
That sounds like an amazing service for students. There's all kinds of issues that they get into and up to and with with all different types of online gaming. Very neat. If anyone in
Right.
the chat has any questions for any of our presenters, we still do have a few minutes left over. So feel free to use that Q&A button or type it into the chat and we can get them answered. If not, then I'd like to say thank you to all of our presenters today. Melanie, would you like to close it out for us this evening?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Nate. Thank everyone for speaking and coming. We do have a few more events coming up. We had to postpone our seat at the table pursuing esports adjacent careers. We'll be announcing a new date soon. And then we will have Lindsay again at our next seat at the table, creating an inclusive and safe place, October 7th. I'll be emailing out the links for you to sign up. And then in about 30 minutes, we will be having open office hours with a super coach. So I will send out that link as well. I'll stay on for a couple minutes if anybody has any questions, but if you haven't signed up, please sign up for PlayVS at playversus.com, and you can email us at support@playvs.com. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. And GLHF, everybody, don't be toxic.
Bye, Coop.
Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.